Hello everyone, this is ICBs here and today we are going to be talking about Daredevil Born Again. And yeah, after such a long time, Marvel has finally decided to make this series, and it wasn't easy for Marvel as well. They decided to reshoot the entire series after they had like 6 episodes ready to ship, but they realized that it was absolutely garbage and they decided to do the whole reshoots, and they made it again to like make it somewhat better, and they decided to bring in the older cast and older people who worked on the original Netflix series. And I definitely think that that was the right call, because these 2 episodes are really good, and for anyone who hasn't watched them, this is a fair warning. We are going to be discussing heavy spoilers, so this is your warning. Now let's start off with one of the bigger decisions that they made for this series. Foggy is dead in just like the first few minutes of this show. They brought him back, and I was really happy. I really liked the character of Foggy. I think he brought much needed humor to what was an overall a very serious and a bleak series. So watching him go like that was definitely disheartening after they reshoot the entire series, and just to bring these two characters back, they have Foggy just go off like that, which was very sad to see. But I do think that it plays a crucial role in Matt Murdock's character growth in this series. But I do think that like everyone knows that Matt is going to come back as Daredevil, so I just don't think that Foggy should have gone like that. I just don't really see the purpose of it. So yeah, the episode starts with the whole cast celebrating the retirement of Associate Sherry at a bar. When Foggy gets a phone call, he steps out, gets shot by Bullseye, and it's a very disheartening scene and a very emotional one at that, when Karen is holding Foggy in his arms and just trying to hold the blood in. It's very disheartening to watch, and I can only imagine what Karen went through. It looks a very traumatic scene. After that, Matt and Bullseye has a very good fight, and is the whole fight as good as the Netflix's fight? I don't think so. Actually, I was very underwhelmed by watching that. A lot of people are saying that this was a very strong start to the series, and I do agree that killing Foggy was a very bold choice. When it comes to action, I just don't think it hit the same way it hit the Netflix series. I do think that Netflix series had something amazing and special going for him whenever they did any action sequences. In this series, they tried to replicate that with the whole fight sequence being shot in a single shot, like it follows the entire fight without any cuts, and it's nice, but it just not good, man. You see a lot of fog, and then you see a couple of silhouettes fighting, and then all you see is huffing and puffing and two people just beating the shit out of one another, and it's very underwhelming, at least for me. I do think that it was a step in the right direction. Overall, the tone of the show, everything is on point. I wouldn't say it's like perfect, but it is definitely a step in the right direction. So like, don't hate me for not liking this fight sequence. I just think that Netflix has done it way better. But yeah, like, props to Marvel for trying, but I do think that they could have done a much better job at this fight sequence. It was just the beginning of the show, and this show has been made after such a long time. Daredevil Born Again, people are tuning in, and I do think they could have done a much better job. So Daredevil and Bullseye are at the rooftop, and Matt hears the Foggy has passed away. He's his heartbeat stops, and Matt can hear that, and Matt goes absolutely batshit, and he throws Bullseye off the building, and which Bullseye survives, but barely. It was a a very dramatic scene. And this was the line that Matt had crossed, that he was talking about in the trailer, and I obviously knew that, judging from hearing Matt talk, he either killed someone or came really close to it. So I suppose he was talking about Bullseye. So that whole traumatic thing happens, and a year has passed, and Matt has retired from being Daredevil, because he obviously he came very close to actually crossing a line which is definitely against his ideals. He's Daredevil, he's definitely not Frank Castle. So 1 year later, Matt has partnered up with Christian to form his own law practice, and he seems to be doing really well. Karen moved to San Francisco, and you see Matt go to Bullseye's trial, where Matt gives a very emotional speech. He momentarily gets stopped when Karen walks into the courtroom, but Matt continues on with his speech, and Bullseye gets his sentence of a lifetime. Later on, Karen and Matt meet after the court hearing, and they definitely seems to be very disturbed by the passing of their friend, and they're definitely grieving in their own way. Afterward, Kristen sets up Matt with her friend Heather, and it's kind of funny because Kristen tells Heather that Matt needs some kind of therapy, and Heather is a therapist, so they meet up, and Heather is like, "Do you need therapy?" And Matt is like, "Aren't you supposed to be a client?" And yeah, they actually hit it off and actually like one another. On the other hand, Fisk is running for the mayor and is momentarily stopped by Matt on a street, and they have their infamous talk while drinking coffee, and they definitely have a heated, not a heated conversation, but it is definitely a loaded conversation. Like these two hated each other, tried to kill one another, and now they're just sitting there and talking to each other. And Fisk has a strong policy against vigilantism, and Matt is obviously warning Fisk that he doesn't care if Fisk is running for the mayor, but if Fisk gets out of line, Matt will definitely stop him. And Fisk saying the same thing, that he doesn't want vigilantes running around in his city. So yeah, that's they're both threatening one another. Towards the end, Matt and Heather are walking together after their date, and they get the news that Wilson Fisk has actually won the elections. And after a brief moment, you see Fisk and Vanessa on a rooftop talking, where Fisk reveals that he knows about Vanessa cheating on him, and Vanessa actually makes Wilson promise that he's not going to hurt that person, and Fisk actually accepts. He makes that promise, and for a moment you think that maybe Wilson Fisk has actually changed, but that's probably not true, because in the next episode you see him doing some shady stuff. So him making a promise not to hurt that person is definitely not true, because he's definitely, at least it's my theory, he will actually end up hurting that person, and he will break that promise, further damaging their relationship. The episode 2 starts with some people beating up a guy, and then another guy whose name is Hector walks in and he tries to stop them, and because this is an underground train station, ends up actually hurting, not hurting, he actually accidentally kills one person because a train passes by really quickly, and it turns out those two people that were hurting that one individual were actually undercover FBI or police agents. And Hector, I suppose, who we later find out is White Tiger, is in big trouble, and when Matt finds out about him, he decides to represent Hector. Later on, at a police officer's funeral that had passed away in that train station accident, you see Wilson Fisk go to that funeral. He doesn't attend it, but waits till the whole funeral is over, and then there he meets with the police commissioner, and the police commissioner obviously sees through Wilson, and he talks very aggressively to Fisk, and Fisk doesn't really say anything, he just listens to him quietly, and that ends the scene. But that's probably not the end of it. I'm sure you guys would understand, because later on, when Fisk is sitting in his office, the police commissioner comes in and he gives Fisk his resignation, along with resignations of several police officers that will resign with him. And of course, Fisk, being Fisk, does the first thing that takes at least me off, that he's definitely still very, very evil. Threatens and blackmails the police commissioner, and it works. He decides to keep working as a police commissioner. Towards the end of this episode, Matt finally finds Torres, and Torres is the name of the guy that was being beaten towards the beginning of this episode by the police officers, and that Hector decided to come in and save. And Torres had been hiding from the police, and Matt finally, when he finally finds him, he tells him that the police is coming for him and that he should run away. When the police finally arrives, and they obviously recognize him as Hector's lawyer, and they starts to beat him for some reason. And one of the police officers, I think, also has a Frank Castle skull tattooed on his arm, which I don't know if it's relevant or not. But yeah, like after they beat the crap out of Matt, and it's probably at this point you're wondering, like, obviously this works in Matt's favor because later on he can testify in the court that, like, these corrupt police officers showed up and they beat me up because I was just, like, there talking to a witness or something. But things change when those two corrupt police officers pull out a gun and they are actually going to kill Matt Murdock, which is okay. So that definitely changes things. So now Matt has to fight back, and he definitely fights back. He, like fighting back would be an understatement. He beats the shit out, the living shit out of them. Like, it was crazy, like bones being broken, the legs being broken, and Matt is overwhelmed and he screams towards the end of the episode. And yeah, that's the end of the episode. And yeah, there's actually one more thing that I actually forgot to mention, because there's been like a public pressure. Fisk and Vanessa actually decide to go to a couples therapy, and that therapist, if you're wondering who that is Heather, Matt's new love interest. So I wonder how that's going to play out. All in all, I do think that this is a step in the right direction for Marvel. I do think that they're doing a good thing with this series. They're definitely treating it with the respect it deserves, and it is only the hard way that they're learning to do it, because they definitely tried to do it their way, and obviously they saw the result and it just didn't work out, and they finally decided to cave in, and they lost a lot of money. So they brought in the original actors and directors and writers, and they decided to reshoot the whole series, which is, you can give them props, like they are actually learning from their mistakes. So yeah, like this is definitely, I've definitely said it so many times, a step in the right direction. But watching these two episodes, I do think that it doesn't really compare to the original Netflix series. Judging from the fight sequences, I do think that there's a chance that it will get much better towards the end of the series. It's been like 2 episodes, and Matt obviously, for the majority of them had retired from being the Daredevil, so we didn't really get to see much of him. But I do think that he's going to be coming back for the next couple of episodes, so that is good news, because the rest of the episodes could be very action packed compared to these two. So yeah, these are my thoughts for the first 2 episodes, and let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, it's time for a goodbye.